Hi, I'm Caroline Mitchell, Canine Behaviourist at Good Doggy. So this is the third and final part of this trauma series of videos. Hopefully you've had plenty of ideas and insights so far about your dog, about trauma, about where it started, and you've had some first steps on where to go next to help solve this. Today we're going to finish the whole process off, and we're going to be talking about getting your dog ready for going back to your rehabilitation plan that will really focus in on those behaviour problems. We're not going to talk too much about that, but what we are going to do is finish off the process and get him nice and ready. We're going to talk about free work and how that might help your traumatised dog. We're going to help you look for ways to monitor your progress and how do you prepare to get back to that rehabilitation plan. So let's get started with the next step of breaking down that trauma shield. So we've started breaking down the trauma shield, and hopefully you can now see some positives emerging in your dog's behaviour. At this stage, I'm not really looking for any kind of major behavioural changes, but as his confidence starts to grow, you might see a few positive changes starting to shine through. Maybe you're starting to see him play more, or he eats better, perhaps he's a bit less alert, or he's watching you more, that kind of thing. So your dog is now maybe starting to explore and enjoy games and toys. So now's the time to introduce free work. So what is free work? Free work basically is, if you can imagine a playground for your dog that includes pretty much everything that your dog could interact with safely. So this could be a space in your back garden, and you would fill it up with lots of different kinds of toys and surfaces and things. Think about things that can be chewed, things that can be licked, smelly things your dog might want to climb on or climb under, perhaps things he could grab and throw or tug. You want to make sure that there's some new things in there he's never seen before, some old toys. You could have stuff in there for him to shred. He could have balls and ropes, noisy toys. You could include boxes with stuff in so that he has to get his face in there, get his nose in, freckle around, try to find stuff. Really go through your shed, check out charity shops and see what you have in there. Think about what your dog might want to toss around or tear up. As long as everything is safe, let your imagination go mad. Make sure also to introduce some novel items in this collection of things. As we know, exploring items is something that dogs that are suffering with trauma find quite challenging. We know that anxiety and curiosity are the opposite of each other. So a dog can't be anxious and curious at the same time. So we want to really see how he responds to some novel items, something new he's never seen before. So basically you're going to set all these things up, and we're going to allow your dog to come into this space, and you want him to really just do whatever he wants. We want to make sure we give him plenty of time so that if anything does cause him anxiety, he'll have time for that to reduce while he's there. We want him to become curious. We want him to explore, and we really want him just to kind of interact with all of this stuff in however he feels is the most beneficial to him. So this is a really good thing to do with dogs that have been put into a rescue, dogs that you don't really know very much about. It can be great for dogs that are suffering with frustration, but it's brilliant for dogs that are suffering with trauma because they gravitate towards certain types of activities, and those are the ones that they really, really enjoy the most at this time. So we want to take advantage of that. We need to find out, given all of the choices in the world, what exactly would your dog actually choose for himself to do? Often when we choose toys for them, we choose toys that suit us. We choose toys that we think our dogs should play with and should want to play with. So we often avoid toys where our dogs tear them up, maybe pull out the stuffing, that kind of thing. So soft toys, maybe your dog's been told off in the past for that kind of behaviour. Humping as well, any kind of chewing. So these kinds of things your dog might hold back a little bit on, but we need to make sure we give him plenty of encouragement and reassure him as much as you need to let him know that whatever he wants to do in this space at this time is completely up to him. This is free play. He can do whatever he wants. All your job is to pay attention and encourage him and let him know that whatever he's doing, it's not wrong. You might find something really interesting about your dog. He might like to go underneath things. You know, if you put a nice blanket out for him, maybe he likes to go underneath that blanket and find treats. Maybe he likes to follow trails. Maybe he likes to shred pieces of paper. Maybe he likes to search through the box of crumpled up paper or bark to find new toys and new treats. Whatever your dog decides he wants to do, that is what he likes best. That is what he needs at this time. So your first task is do your free play with your dog, do some free work, and then I want you to start finding ways for him to do that activity as much as he needs to over the next few weeks. Really allow him to be himself and to do this, whatever it is. If it's tearing something up, get him stuff to tear up, because this is how he wants to relieve any kind of frustration, any kind of trapped emotions. It'll all start to help as he's allowed to do that activity, and that will just start to really make a big difference to him. So repeat that a few times over the next few weeks, and then come back and do this free play again in about a month's time and see how he responds to the exercise then. Hopefully his frustration will be lower, his anxiety will be lower, and other things will have been changing as well. Maybe his sense of joy has increased, so his choices might change. So that's something for you to get on with the next few weeks, and then again repeat this whole exercise. So now what we want to do is to start to slowly reintroduce your dog's trigger. And I say slowly because we know that dogs use emotion to decide how to respond to new things based on how they responded to similar things in the past. So what this means is that when your dog is triggered into a fear emotion, let's say that emotion is triggered at level 5, he will go into his brain very, very quickly, and he will search for the last time he experienced level 5 anxiety. He will use the response he used on that day to respond to this current situation. The reason he does this is because there's no time to analyze, there's no time to think, there's no time to plan. It's not just dogs that respond to emergency situations like that, we do as well. So what we want to try and do is we want to try and reintroduce this trigger in such a way that he can experience it without that emotion level rising. So if your dog is scared of other dogs, we want to make sure the dog is far enough away that your dog can go, oh, I don't think I'm happy with the situation, but we don't want him to go above level 1 anxiety. If that dog is far enough away, that's where he'll stay. So when he goes into his brain to decide, how do I respond to this situation, he will compare his response to those of level 1 anxieties in the past, which means that probably he'll just look at the dog from afar. He might start to stare, he might start to lick his lips, but you're not going to see that big reaction that you used to get when he went right into full flight or fight mode. Your detox will have helped this, because hopefully his anxiety when he sees that trigger is already going to be lower, because he's had that time for his brain to rest. It's had time for him to sort of to relax from those experiences. So now already he should be seeing a much smaller reaction. But what you need to do now is you need to manage the situation and manage that emotional level for him. He might go through his mind and decide that there aren't any situations that are similar to this one in terms of the level of emotion, the level of emergency. In which case then, what we're going to do is we're going to start to teach him things that we would like him to do. You've already practiced some new tricks. By now, hopefully your dog is quite good at a sit, but he might have learned something else as well in the last step of this program. So why don't we ask him to do that? Once he's done what you've asked him to do, you can use your clicker if that's what you're doing, or you can offer him some praise and a treat, or all three, even better. Using a clicker is great because you can use that to shape and capture new behavior. I made a video specifically about shaping and capturing with a clicker, so I definitely suggest you go back and look at it. But essentially what we're going to do now is we're going to start rewarding experiences that he naturally chooses that are what we want. So let's say that we are in the presence of his trigger. That dog is still in the distance. Maybe he looks at you and you can reward that. So you could just say good boy, you could offer a treat, or if you were using your clicker, you'd press your clicker. Perhaps he chooses to sniff the ground. Any kind of disengagement with that object, his trigger in the background, should get loads and loads of rewards and encouragement. If it's not a moving trigger, like a dog or a person or a child or something like that that can be seen in the distance, you would very slowly start to increase the volume or the intensity. So whatever you did last time to reduce the intensity of the experience that you're having, the experience that will trigger your dog, then we're going to start to slowly undo that. Keeping in mind that we've got a list of things that we can ask him to do if he's not sure. And also we're going to reward the good choices that he does make. Those accidental good behaviors that he makes while his trigger is present and while his anxiety is just simmering away at the lowest possible level. While this is all going on, we need to make sure that we advocate for our dog. I talk about advocating a lot. Your dog is not over his trauma yet. And any experience might appear scary to him at this time. Sometimes new things might come up. Maybe your dog's been very traumatized and he has shut down when it comes to certain types of experiences. If this has been the case, then what might happen is as your dog starts to recover from this trauma, he might actually start to show a fear response to stuff he's never shown a fear response to. So over the next few weeks while you go through this process, watch him very, very carefully. Whatever you see, if he's starting to show any signs of discomfort, his first choice in a scary situation is always going to be to run and avoid. So what you need to look for is any kind of avoidance behavior. That's anything that basically looks like he's trying not to interact. So he might be looking away, he might be moving away, he might be hiding. You might see some stiff posture. He might refuse to move, or he might move faster. Maybe he's going to look away, lick his lips. Maybe your dog has his own tails, but instinct will tell you when you see him performing in a certain way that he doesn't want to be there. If this happens for your dog, then you need to advocate for him and help him achieve what he wants to achieve. Whatever he's trying to do, he's trying to avoid a situation. So respect his choice and let's help him avoid. If he doesn't want to be near something, then you can take him away. If he looks like he wants to hide behind you, then you stand in front of him and protect him. Whatever you can do to advocate for him, to help him achieve the result he wants, will help him feel super safe when he is with you. It is such a powerful thing to have somebody watching and listening and helping you do what you would like to do. So when the fireworks are on at night and you can't avoid that and he wants to hide, let him hide. Help him hide, you know. If he wants to go under blankets, get him loads of blankets. Whatever he needs from you at this stage while we're going through this, then do that. If he's scared to approach something, take him away. It's such a small step, but it means so much to him. And when he feels like you have his back this way and you are going to help him and you are going to advocate for him, his anxiety levels will drop, his trauma levels will drop, and his resilience will start to grow. Also play with them a chase me game. Dogs need to feel confident in their abilities to cope, whatever the situation is. And we've already introduced him playing with his friends. In the last video, we talked a lot about the benefits of that, practicing hunting and fighting and things like that. And this chase me game is something that you can do with your dog. And it's a great thing to do with him when you spot that he is looking uncomfortable in a situation. And maybe it's gone on a bit longer than it should have. Perhaps you weren't paying attention. Then you can play chase me. This will help him feel confident that you have his back. It will let him feel like he has ran away from something that was scaring him. Again, remember we talked about how when a dog feels trapped in a situation and they're not able to do fight or flight, that's when the trauma is potentially he's at risk of. So what we need to do is teach him this chase me game, and that is also really fun and rewarding. And this is a very simple game. My caveat before I tell you how to play it is that when you do this, be very, very aware of your environment. I'm going to ask you to run backwards or run sideways away from your dog. So you need to know where you're running to. Don't run in front of traffic, don't run into rivers, don't run off cliffs, don't run in front of people or anything like that. So be very, very aware of where you are and potential dangers that are nearby so you don't put yourself into a risky situation by just playing this game. It's not worth it at all. So before you start learning how to play this game, do remember that safety is king, and be aware of where you are. But your chase me game. So all you're going to do is have your treat in your hand or your clicker. And as you run backwards away from your dog, you're just going to call their name and you're just going to go, chase me, chase me, chase me. Or you can say, come, 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 something like that. As you're running backwards, your treat is in your hand or your clicker, and he's going to follow that. If you're using a clicker, you can keep pressing it as long as he comes towards you. And when you've gone back about 6 or 7 feet, stop and then give your dog his final reward, his treat, his game with his toy, or you can just give him loads of praise, whatever is working for you at the time. So the idea is it's very exciting because you're using a very high-pitched voice. You're running away from him suddenly. He's running with you. Loads of praise, loads of reward, loads of giggles. And this is going to be a really fun thing. Practice this a few times every day. He will love this little game. He can be on his lead. He can be on a long line. Don't let him get too far away from you though, because then he really kind of loses focus on you and he becomes disconnected to you when you're out for your walk. So do this when he's reasonably close, within about 6 to 8 feet at the most, so he can really just enjoy this game. And you can start to practice it whenever you see something that triggers him. If you hear a noise, if you see a dog in the distance, if you see a bike coming towards you, do your little chase me game so that you're reversing away from the trigger. So he will turn away from the trigger and come towards you. Him turning his back on the trigger and running at you is very cathartic for him and very therapeutic. But also it means he disengages from the trigger, because when they start to see a trigger, see something that's going to make them scared, then they start to stare and they become very stiff. Their muscles become stiff. This will loosen him up and get him running with you. So if you don't want to do backwards, go sideways. But either way, the whole point of this game is that you're looking at him, he's looking at you, and you are running away and he is chasing you for fun. It has all these other benefits, but mostly this is just a really fun game. And it helps break that tension and helps stop further trauma. So it's ideal if you've got yourself into a little situation, perhaps that you haven't been able to avoid, or for whatever reason. And on this as well, have a look at what their favourite game and toy is. We did some free play earlier. That may have given you some clues as to what that is, but maybe you already know what their absolute favourite thing is, and maybe it's just chasing a ball, or maybe it's playing with a raggy toy or something like that. Start introducing that as a part of their training plan. This isn't just for fun, this is part of their training. Play fighting, chasing, all of that stuff is a really good confidence building exercise, but it's a great release as well of emotion and energy. If your dog has a friend, now's the time to arrange that play date so that his friend can come over. Try and encourage them to play any way they want, whatever feels good for them. Your dog will naturally choose the types of games that he wants to play that are going to benefit him the most. So just let that happen and just really enjoy watching that. If you're concerned about play fighting and wrestling getting out of hand, then look out for the little hip hop that comes before it starts. So they'll do a little play bob or a play bow. Sometimes it's so quick that a bow doesn't really kind of cover it. Sometimes it's just a little tap as they bounce on their front paws. That is them initiating play, and that's them having a mutual agreement that whatever happens from here on doesn't mean anything, that it's just practice, it's just play. And when they want that to stop, they'll sit really still and they'll turn their head and they'll go very stiff and they'll go like this. And as soon as they've gone like that, that's basically the end of that agreement. I stopped wanting to play now and I want to move on to something else. If you've seen those two things and your dog routinely does them, then you know he's in control of the play and that whatever happens is play. If you don't see signs like that, then take it a bit more carefully and use your gut instinct to decide. If you think it's getting too much, then you can stop it. But if your dogs are both good at these things, then it's fine. And you may find actually that the stop now kind of mode, that stiff turning away behaviour, only happens for a second, and then moments later they're back to play bowing again and they're running around. So your dog perhaps just needs a little breath of fresh air and then he can get back to it. So that's the kind of stuff that you're looking for if you want to know if play fighting, play hunting, that kind of stuff is actually just in play or if it's just got out of hand. So what are we doing with all of this? So by easing him very gradually towards his trigger, we are very, very slowly releasing tiny bits of that energy that's been trapped. Remember at the very, very start of the video sections, we talked about energy and how when a dog experiences trauma, the emotion that's connected to that trauma gets trapped and is not allowed to be released. So that affects all of their behavior from that point forward. So by easing them gently towards the trigger and moving away, gently moving towards and moving away, we are allowing some of that to be released. By playing hunting games, chasing games, we are again allowing a little bit more of that energy that's trapped in there to be released. And we're doing this in a really, really controlled way. We're not trying to let that emotion spike at any time. We don't want them to repeat that traumatic experience. We don't want those thoughts back in that head. We don't want that adrenaline released to that level anymore. We want to really control it. We want to help him learn that he can escape, that we will listen to him when he's scared, that he has the abilities that he needs to help keep himself safe. We're going to build his confidence so that all of these things will come together and that trauma will slowly but surely drain away. This is not a race. We don't want to let it all out in one go, because what that looks like is a panic attack. It looks like rage. It's unpredictable aggression. We need to just very slowly just let this go bit by bit, under control. So what's next? So now you might be thinking about working on those specific behavior problems that you've had in the past. Your shield is starting to come down. That shield is preventing you from working on things in the past, like your dog's reactive behavior, anxiety, OCD, separation anxiety, all those problems we discussed earlier, and whatever else your dog is suffering with at the moment, the stuff that you've been working on. Now your behavior plan may well start to be looking like it could start to work for you. His shield is starting to come down. You might see him starting to be more enthusiastic about wanting to learn things. But before we start to introduce his training plan again, I want to talk about ways to monitor his progress. So every single win that your dog achieves is worth celebrating. For example, maybe you go out into the park and your dog is walking around and a person goes by on a skateboard. Usually that would have triggered him, but actually this time it didn't. Often people will tell me when we get sort of towards the latter stages of the behavior plan that this has been happening and they've not been able to practice the training how we did it because the dog's not been noticing stuff in their environment. So that's made it really hard. And this for me is a brilliant win. It's a fantastic sign that that trauma is going away. Remember we said that trauma survivors actively look for danger. Whenever they go anywhere, they are alert to it. That radar is on and it's searching for danger. So if your dog misses a trigger, that was no accident. It tells us that that radar has now been switched off, or at least in that moment it had. And now we know that that has happened once. It can happen again and again. We know that he's making progress. That shield is really starting to come down. Maybe your dog has now started to take treats. In the past, dogs might have refused a treat or certain kinds of play, or maybe they won't take treats in the park, but they will at home. Again, trauma keeps dogs out of rest and digest state. So when he starts to take treats when he never used to, again, this is another really huge sign of recovery. So look out for that. Look out for missing traumas. If he does accidentally get triggered and he relaxes much quicker than he ever did before, also a brilliant sign. It means his brain is searching now for different ways to respond to a situation that he's been put in that he's not coping well with, but he's coping better. Maybe the reaction is less. Again, a really awesome sign. So all of these things need to be celebrated. Maybe your dog is sleeping better. Maybe he eats better. When you put the food down, perhaps he eats it straight away. And maybe he's doing that routinely now. Again, another sign that he's gone into rest and digest mode, that extra sleep and that food, perhaps resource guarding is starting to reduce a little bit. So what I want you to do is to get yourself a jar. Every time you see one of these things happen with your dog, put a pebble in it. Whenever he does something great, stick a pebble in it. This is not a linear process. Your win jar will always remind you of all of those successes. None of those successes were accidents. They all happened because you have been working with your dog in a really positive way and it's making a difference. But it's not linear, as I said. You have good days and bad days. Resilience is not a fixed number. It fluctuates throughout the day. If your dog didn't get a lot of sleep last night, today's resilience might be a bit low. Maybe you had a lot of visitors this morning, so now that's knocked his resilience down a little bit lower today than what it was the other day. So all of these things will affect your dog's behavior on an hour by hour, day by day basis. When your dog is at his lowest resilience, you're likely to feel like you've had some setbacks. But when he's at maximum resilience, you're going to feel like you're flying. You're going to feel like everything's working and it's amazing. But he's at his maximum resilience, not by accident, because you've helped him get there. So all of these wins need to be celebrated. So put a pebble in your jar every time something fantastic happens. And when you have a bad day, I want you to look at that jar and see how many pebbles are in there. And I want you to feel how amazing that is, because that was no accident. That happened because of what you've done with your dog so far. So now let's start thinking about tackling those behavior problems. Do check out my other videos. I've got hundreds on there and they cover a wide range of topics that will help you navigate your dog's behavior a little better. Some are more specific to different kinds of behaviors. I have many videos about reactive behavior. I've got some on separation anxiety. I've got some on all different kinds of topics. So check those out. Go back to your original plan, the plan that you started with all those months ago. And if you don't have a plan, now's the time to get one. But if you do have a plan, revisit it, have a look at the plan, make sure it's a positive training method based plan, and have another go at it. Get started again where you were all this time before you realized that trauma was actually getting in the way of your success. Start from scratch. Don't worry that it didn't work in the past. Now you know why. The shield was blocking your progress. That shield is gone now, or it's on its way. It's very weak. So your work will now start to take effect. I want to thank you for watching this set of videos. I hope that they have been helpful to you. I hope that you now have a better understanding of trauma. I hope you have a better understanding of your dog as well and his behavior and maybe what he's been going through with his trauma. Even if you never discover the exact moment that that started, hopefully you understand at least how to fix it, because ultimately that's the most important thing. You have somewhere to start now. Please do get in touch with me if you want somebody to talk to about your dog's specific situation, about their trauma, their behavior, and together we could make a bespoke plan that will suit you. If you find it difficult to follow these kinds of instructions, a face-to-face, one-to-one, where I can answer your specific questions might be exactly what you need. Here's how you can get help, and I hope to see you again on the next video. Take care for now. Bye-bye. If you aren't sure how to approach trauma recovery with your own dog, if you have any concerns or doubts, or maybe you're not even sure if he has trauma, please get in touch with an experienced positive-only behaviourist who has a good understanding of what your dog is going through and how to help them recover from trauma. Getting this wrong could be damaging, and if you're using the wrong methods, you could end up reducing resilience and put your dog into a state of helplessness. This might look like success, but actually the dog has just regressed deeper into trauma and started to shut down. Find a specialist who has done separate trauma training. Many dog behaviour courses don't go anywhere near enough detail. I've studied trauma in humans and animals for longer than many behaviourists study just dog behaviour alone. We are out there, so please look us up. This kind of training can be done online really easily, just using a series of videos and conversations and asking the right questions. So don't worry if there isn't somebody in your area. I work with dogs all over the UK with huge success and some further even afield. I can do an assessment and bespoke plan for you to help you tackle trauma prior to rehabilitation. And I can help you with the rehabilitation too. So please get in touch for more information. I'm going to put my details in the description. But if you're not sure, getting help from somebody that you can actually speak to and ask questions for is really invaluable.